morning, everyone. Welcome. Nayaswami, Devarshi, and I are broadcasting this evening, as always, from the Ananda Monastery in Maharashtra, India. And we're very happy to be here together with all of you. This evening, we have a very important topic, which is renunciation, and I'm looking forward to speaking on it. And of course, this webinar is based on the book Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Kriyananda. And we will go through an affirmation that Swamiji gives for us every week, and as well as we'll listen to some words that he's written about this affirmation. So without further ado, I will open up this affirmation and I will read from it. Renunciation means turning one's back on non-essentials, that we may give our whole attention to the Lord. We might think of renunciation as an investment, which initially may seem a loss, but in time becomes multiplied to many times its original worth. The least gift that we give to God will return to us in divine blessings 1,000-fold. Renunciation means nothing less than the gift to God of oneself. Renunciation is of the heart. It isn't what you wear or the outward rules you follow. When you renounce all for God, you hold that renunciation as a precious secret between you and Him. All your desires, all your ambitions, then are for Him alone. So let's do the affirmation together. Let's do it first in a loud voice. I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. Now, in a normal voice, I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. And now, in a whisper, I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountain. I am free, I am free. And now mentally, taking it deep into your subconscious mind, I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. And one more time, mentally, taking this into your superconscious mind, I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountain. I am free, I am free. And now the prayer, pray along silently. Lord, help me to see that in no outward experience will I ever find fulfillment. All that my heart has ever sought awaits me in thee. Om Shanti. So I'll now hand it over to Devarshi ji.
Thank you, Jemal. This is a really beautiful topic. We in Khandala, we are renunciates. We live as renunciates. But two things that are really important to understand about this. One is that I'll talk more about in a little bit, that renunciation is not what you do outwardly. It's not the garb you wear, this yellow, this blue color stuff that we're wearing. It's really the color of your heart in a way. And it really is a precious secret between you and God. I know many true great renunciates who are unnoticed because outwardly, in the worldly view, they are not renunciates. But first, I wanted to talk about this word renunciation. I think the sages and the saints and the sadhus and those who were free, they tricked everyone by calling it renunciation. And what they're doing, I think, is they're tricking the worldly people and just kind of fooling them and making them not get interested, because renunciation, you have to give something up. You have to let go of something and just renounce. And it sounds kind of grim. And for a worldly person, especially, well, I don't want to give up all this stuff. But really, it's not about giving up anything. It's about gaining everything, and it's about giving everything. And so it's not about giving anything up. It's really only about giving ourselves to God. And it's entirely in the heart. This Dwapara Yuga renunciation was really launched by Swami Kriyananda, who was the first in our line of gurus who was a renunciate. And if you remember an autobiography of a yogi, Mahavatar Babaji called him Swamiji when he met him at the Kumbh Mela in Allahabad many decades, centuries ago. And he was married at that time. And he said, "Sir, I'm not a Swamiji. I'm married." And Babaji said, "Who I bestow the title Swamiji is a Swamiji." And he was married until his wife passed away, renunciate, a Swami. And the Nayaswami order, it's for people who are inwardly renouncing, as Sri Yukteswarji did. And outwardly, he stayed in his family home. He turned it into an ashram. He owned some houses that he rented as a way of supporting the young men, monks who were living under him and who he was teaching and training. So this true renunciation is not outward at all. Now you can some people could rationalize it by, living an easy life and a wealthy one and say, well, then I'm a renunciate too. But really, it's about giving our heart to God. And that's the true renunciation. Now, the ultimate renunciation is giving all of our energy, all of our life force, who we are, everything to the Lord. And in a way, Swamiji, it's very beautiful. He says renunciation means turning one's back on non-essentials, that we may give our whole attention to the Lord. And so, yes, we as renunciates, we have cars that we drive and laptops. And so we have these things which are essential for giving, for doing this, for serving others, for giving ourselves in service to God. And Swamiji adds, we might think of renunciation as an investment, which initially may seem a loss, but in time becomes multiplied to many times its original worth. The least gift that we give to God will return to us in divine blessings 1,000-fold. Now, most people in this world, the way they work with this investment of our lives is that they put all of their investment resources into an asset that is continually depreciating over time and will be worth zero in the end. And that is this human body. People try to pamper it and get the perfect place for the body and the clothes and the look and the perfect appearance and how they look to others. And they're investing all their life force in something that inevitably, year by year, becomes worthless. In fact, it becomes ashes, quite literally, when we bring ourselves or we're dragged willingly, unwillingly, or we offer ourselves on the funeral pyre at the end of this life. And so the yogi is simply investing in something else, into an asset that appreciates over time, as Swamiji writes, which is that it becomes multiplied to many times its original worth when we give ourselves completely, wholeheartedly, and freely to God. Now, that giving is not about what we do outwardly. It's not about the garb we wear. It's really giving our thoughts, our desires, our actions, whatever those actions are, And again, I know some really true renunciates who have raised children as a renunciate. They've given their lives to God, they've given their children to God in a way by serving them and renouncing their own personal desires. In some ways, that's one of the greatest ways of renunciation, and one of the greatest ways to learn renunciation is to raise a family and give one's life to that, one's life force, literally, when a mother gives of herself to giving birth to a child and feeding it and raising it, and the family supports it. And so simply renunciation is letting go of this little self and offering it into the infinite self. And this is not an easy thing. And it can be a subtle thing, and it's a very inward thing. And it means giving ourselves, our life force, in service, in devotion. It's where the heart goes. It's not outwardly at all, Swamiji says. He says renunciation means nothing less than the gift to God of oneself. And it takes some courage. It takes discipline, because we cannot give a gift that we don't own already. And in order to own the gift of ourselves, to give it to God, we have to have a focus and a discipline and work with practices like Kriya Yoga, which give us control over our emotions, our desires, so that we can give ourselves to God. Because it does take a certain amount of control of the life force of our attachments and our desires to be able to freely, completely give ourselves to God in the true renunciation, which is the gift to God of oneself. And finally, Swamiji says, renunciation is of the heart. It isn't what you wear or the outward rules that you follow. When you renounce all for God, you hold that renunciation as a precious secret between you and Him. And again, it's completely inwardly. It's not about how you talk, it's not your garb, it's not what you do, it's not the position that you have in this life. It's really purely an act of giving, of devotion, of one's desires, one's thoughts, one's motivations, and doing everything for God. And again, this can happen right where each one of us is right now, with your life, with your career even. If you give to God and act in that way, you will find, as I have done, that when I have done my service and job, in a sense, as an act of devotional offering to God, that I very much more quickly pass through the different sort of lessons of life that are important to learn in different roles that we play, in different jobs that we have. And finally, Swamiji says, all your desires, all your ambitions then are for Him alone. And so this is the ultimate renunciation. It's not renouncing anything, it's giving everything, simply giving ourselves to God. And the results, the rewards, the appreciation of this investment comes back 1,000-fold as divine bliss, divine joy, divine freedom. There was a great yogi, an autobiography of a yogi, I think it was Swami Pranavananda, who was praised for his renunciation. And he said, no, not at all. He said, the worldly people, they are the true renunciates. They've given up all this bliss, all this joy, all this freedom. And I haven't given that up. I've gained that by giving my life to God. And so the worldly people, this is the trick, again, as I started with, that the great sages have done by calling it renunciation. The worldly people, those who live in attachment and desire and littleness, they're the ones who have given up and renounced the entire universe, becoming one with the infinite and becoming one with our true nature, the divine, as infinite Satchidanandam, divine bliss. This is what you gain when you give everything up and give it to God.
Thank you, Devarshi. I just want to continue on in that train of thought that people think of renunciation as what they give up. That, maybe I now only have one set of clothes, or maybe I only eat such and such on such day, or whatever. But this path that we're on is much more about not these outer things and not about what we're giving up, but it's bliss affirming, that we are really saying, if you concentrate on what you're giving up, it's a miserable life. It's just not going to work. But if you concentrate on what you're receiving from God and how you can give that to others, and namely bliss of how much joy that we can receive from God, and then not even that to try to hold on to ourselves, but see how much joy and bliss we can give to others. This is a whole different way of looking at spirituality than in the past. And in my opinion, it's the only way that works, because if we are concentrating on what we're giving up, we're just thinking about ourselves and we're thinking about what we've lost. Um, but if we can concentrate on finding God, and then, of course, ultimately, the only thing that there ever really was or is or will be to give up is our ego. And it's an interesting thing that that particular process will look a little bit different for each person. That when someone truly becomes a saint, they become uniquely themselves. And in some ways, they have taken their own journey in their own way to figuring out how to let go of everything and be unattached to everything. And it's not easy, actually, to be unattached to everything. I was reading the book, The New Path, and in there, Swamiji speaks about renunciation, but he speaks a little bit sternly of how difficult it actually is to give up everything, to give up all attachments, to give everything back to God. In fact, in that chapter, he speaks about living in a monastery, and even within that, even if you were to live in a monastery, that it's good to be a little bit removed, to not think, oh, now I'm with all monks and I'll just be social with everyone and everything will be all joyful. That even within that, that your true friend, your true mate in this world is God. And he talked about how even a little bit of sternness is necessary there. Now, I've dedicated my life to serving Master, to serving Swami, and to seeing to the best of my ability how much I can give up the ego. And so naturally, I've thought about what does renunciation mean? And it's honestly, it takes a lot of courage to decide that you really want to go within. And again, Devarshi ji mentioned this, that this is an inside job, but it takes a lot of courage to go within and really be honest and say, am I attached to this particular thing or that particular thing? And then inwardly give it back to God and say that God will ultimately take care of everything, that God will take care of us financially, God will take care of even all the little sweet details of life. And I don't think most of us are going to be like the man in Autobiography of a Yogi who simply jumped off of a cliff and decided he wasn't even attached to his body when Babaji said you're not developed enough. I think slowly we have to learn what are we willing to give up, and then, and not only give up, but then say, God, I'll rely on you to provide this for me. And then see that God does provide that. And of course, God is only going to provide for our needs. God does not answer every single little prayer. And the reason why is most of us don't really know what in the heck we want, that our prayers are jumbled with many just wild desires and demands and whims and fancies. And if God were to grant all of them, our lives would be a wreck. And so God gives us what we need. And if we can live with that understanding and then start to reduce our needs inwardly. And this, Devarshi ji also spoke about this, that yes, we have cars at the monastery. It's a need in this day and age. But what I do with things of this nature is ask myself, am I attached to it? That if it were to go tomorrow, is there any little, and it's such a subtle little feeling, it's a feeling in the heart Or you might think, whoa, 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 but wait a second. How would I do this? How would I do that? Oh, I don't know. But if you just are honest with those little feelings and say, well, okay, if God were to take it, okay. And then God will then give something else or change whatever circumstances so that we can serve God. You see, the worldly person is constantly thinking, what do I want? And the perfect renunciate is constantly thinking, what does God want? And day by day, we're trying to become more and more perfect in our inner renunciation and asking, what do you want here, God? What do you want? I want to go back. I want, hopefully, what God wants to go back to this topic of the car because it is a good topic. And in that, it's just a good example. It's also not enough to just say, well, I won't take care of the car. I won't put petrol in it. God will just have to do it, because we have to be responsible. We have to take care of whatever God has given us, and it becomes a delicate balance for us to pay attention and do our duties, but do them in a spirit of nishkam karma and without being attached to the results and with a feeling that God is the doer. Ultimately, if you think this through, who else could be the doer? I mean, of course, I'll put it the way Haridas Ji from Bangalore once did. If you really analyze crossing the street and you think, now I'm going to move the tendon in my big toe in order to lift that, and now I'm going to look left and make sure no cars are there, and now my calf muscle is flexing. And even crossing the street, are you really doing it? Who's moving all of those different tendons and paying attention to everything? And if you even a little would suffice, Master said. If we really just think it through, of course God's the one who's doing everything. And my final point here is, I don't think we have many monks watching. And so renunciation, it's an inner job. And it's again going back, watching the heart, watching the energy, watching the mind, and asking, am I attached to all of this? Or could I let it go tomorrow? If God asked me to leave tomorrow, could I let all of this go inwardly? And the more we can let it all go inwardly and give it back to God, the more freedom and joy we will live in. So, joy to everyone. I'll hand it back now over to Devarshi.
We'll now go through the reading again, and then we'll do the affirmation several times, the way that Swamiji writes about doing it in the introduction to the book, Affirmations for Self-Healing. So again, renunciation means turning one's back on non-essentials, that we may give our whole attention to the Lord. We might think of renunciation as an investment, which initially may seem a loss, but in time becomes multiplied to many times its original worth. The least gift that we give to God will return to us in divine blessings 1,000-fold. Renunciation means nothing less than the gift to God of oneself. Renunciation is of the heart. It isn't what you wear or the outward rules you follow. When you renounce all for God, you hold that renunciation as a precious secret between you and Him. All your desires, all your ambitions then are for Him alone. So now we will do the affirmation a number of times. We'll do it loudly at first to grab the attention of the conscious mind, quietly more to absorb the meaning, in a whisper to take the meaning into the subconscious, silently to deepen our absorption at the subconscious level, and then silently at the end, but this time with rising aspiration, offering and repeating it at the Christ center, at the point between the eyebrows. So please repeat after me. First loudly, commanding the attention of our conscious mind. I spurn the tempting magic of this world, with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. And now a little more quietly, tuning into the meaning of the words. I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. And now in a whisper, carrying the meaning down into our subconscious, I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. Again whispering, I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. And now silently, deepening our absorption at the subconscious level, I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. And now silently again, but with rising aspiration, concentrating at the point between the eyebrows, I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. I spurn the tempting magic of this world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. See where I fly, high above the tall mountains. I am free, I am free. And now mentally follow along with this prayer. Lord, help me to see that in no outward experience will I ever find fulfillment. All that my heart has ever sought awaits me in thee. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And if you can, take this affirmation with you throughout this week as a way of going much deeper into it. May the blessings of our great renunciate masters guide us on this inward path of renunciation. It's been a joy sharing with you.